collect books through donations. So the Bharat Gyan Vigyan Samiti, BGVS, which works closely with us, among many such organizations, suggested that we should have a program called Pustaka Jolige, which is really a bag of books. In the middle of COVID, we didn't want to do a massive procession to convert this into a public program, but there would be a small little group walking from house to house saying, we'll give you, we are coming to your doorstep, give us a book. In Kannada, I know that some of our Karnataka members are here, and Kannadadalli ಒಂದು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ನಾವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಬಾಗಿಲಿಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಪುಸ್ತಕ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೋಳಿಗೆ ನೆನಪಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ. So we said, we are coming to your doorstep, please give us just one book for our bag. And this is how a state-driven program made efforts in the middle of a pandemic to actually reach its message to every house. From Karnataka, I work in Karnataka, where we are blessed with many positives of social infrastructure, including a network of nearly 7,000 libraries, public libraries. This dates back to 1965, when Karnataka enacted its public libraries legislation. However, even prior to that, in 1914 and 1915, Karnataka, then the Mysore state, the Mysore princely state, was the home of two of the earliest such public libraries in India, one in Bangalore and one in Mysore. The Bangalore library in Shishadri Hall is now the State Central Library, and beautiful building, beautiful setting. I would encourage you all to visit it whenever you're in Bangalore. And of course, it requires renovation, and that's something that we're working on. This network of 7,000 public libraries actually is the result of somebody we all admire and cherish, Professor Ranganathan, and we all know his story. Karnataka is one of the recipient states of his very powerful dream of having a solid, robust network of public libraries, which is also made sustainable through a cess, through a library cess, which is charged on various types of tax. In Karnataka, it's the library cess is charged by local bodies, rural and urban local bodies, on the property tax. Therefore, we are blessed with this network of district, city, taluk, and below taluk, gram panchayat level public libraries. I should also add that Karnataka is home to another very radical legislation, which first was enacted in the 1980s, the Mandal Panchayat and Zilla Parishad legislation, which created local bodies, representative local bodies in mandals or grassroots elected bodies in the rural parts of the state. This was also a template for the 1993 73rd Amendment, after which Karnataka enacted a Gram Swaraj and Panchayat Raj Act. We now have close to almost 6,000 Gram Panchayats. Why is this important? Because the Gram Panchayats are where the Gram Panchayat level rural public libraries are located. However, the libraries which work in the Gram Panchayats were actually vertically managed through the libraries department of the state until 2019. I'm going to speak as a practitioner, so I'm just going to give you very straight facts, no plain vanilla. So I'm not really going to theorize or conceptualize about this. But it's an interesting story, and I hope I tell it well enough. So in 2019, as an exercise in further decentralization, the 5,600 and odd libraries, to be very precise, 5623 GP, Gram Panchayat libraries, were transferred to the Rural Development Panchayat Raj Department as an exercise in further decentralization, so that they're no longer vertically managed, but they're managed. 2020, COVID broke out, and like the rest of India, we had school and college closures. At the time of the COVID pandemic, I think two things happened together, and this is why my interest is always in rural public libraries, which are managed by rural communities through their elected bodies. During the COVID pandemic, we saw that Gram Panchayats in rural Karnataka came to the forefront in the effective science-based awareness creation, dissemination, and effective COVID management, helping to set up, taking the initiative to set up institutional quarantine centers, helping with livelihood. MG Narega person days generated in the COVID years was 16 crore person days, which is a record for Karnataka. And a study by Dr. Vijay Rao and others of the World Bank actually showed that during COVID, the elected local bodies in Karnataka generated 15% more person days than administrator-driven panchayats, which shows the responsiveness of local governance. This responsiveness is what led us to think that in the time of school and college closures, what if we revive the public libraries, which are in the rural local bodies' control, and make them safe spaces for rural children and young people to study at a time when schools and colleges are closed, but they need to, there was this huge anxiety about learning. How do we study? How do we catch up? How do we write our exams? How do we, stay with our reading skills and our math skills and so on? So this is something that we started on the 1st of November 2020. We started a program called Odo Belaku, the Fire of Reading, which was just a program aimed with 4 very simple, because there was no time to do a pilot, there was no, it was in the middle of the pandemic. We had to really do things that would work. We did see that in Karnataka there were primary school teachers in North Karnataka who started neighborhood learning centers, even while schools were closed. With the help of the panchayat, they started neighborhood learning centers by coming and visiting and helping young children to stay connected with learning. This inspired us to start Odo Belaku, which is 4 principles. One is that every rural library in the panchayat's control will have a children's section. Second, that all rural children up to the age of 18 years, from 6 to 18 years, will get free membership. There was a small, tiny little deposit, refundable deposit, but we did not want even that deposit to be a hurdle for any child. The third was that, and the Gram Panchayat would of course bear the cost of the deposit. That was how we funded it. The third was that every rural library will have not only books, but it will also have computers, at least 2 computers with internet, UPS and so on. Which meant obviously that the library would have to have a building, it would have to have electricity. You'd be surprised, some rural libraries were still functioning out of corners of panchayat buildings and or corners of little dilapidated spaces functioning out of trunks and so on, and they were dormant, so we needed to really revive them. And the fourth was that we would revive the library as a child-friendly and colourful and vibrant space. This is all. These are just the 4 things. The other important thing about this, I should also add that we said we will collect books through donations. So the Bharat Gyan Vigyan Samiti, BGVS, which works closely with us, among many such organizations, suggested that we should have a program called Pustaka Jolige, which is really a bag of books. In the middle of COVID, we didn't want to do a massive procession to convert this into a public program, but there would be a small little group walking from house to house saying, we'll give you, we are coming to your doorstep, give us a book. In Kannada, I know that some of our Karnataka members are here, ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ನಾವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಬಾಗಿಲಿಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಪುಸ್ತಕ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೋಳಿಗೆ ನೆನಪಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ. So we said, we are coming to your doorstep, please give us just 1 book for our bag. And this is how a state-driven program made efforts in the middle of a pandemic to actually reach its message to every house. It was a beautiful thing because in places like Koppal, Gangavati, we think that, of course, there were massive civil society response was massive. Foundations like Azim Premji Foundation generously donated books for 5,000 libraries, Pratham Books, others. Nimhan's campus organized a collection and organized 15 cartons of books which came. All this happened during the COVID pandemic. St. Joseph's opened their auditorium, an auditorium as big as this, for us to collect all the books, and there were young people from Manipur and other places who were studying in Bangalore, whose colleges were closed. They came and volunteered to sort the books. So it was amazing. But what was even more amazing was the response was not just in Bangalore. Even in a faraway place like Gangapur Taluk in Koppal, the Pustaka Jolige collected 8,000 books by going house to house. Some of the villages would greet the little procession which walked with social protection and mask and all that in the middle of COVID. They would greet them with a band set. Okay, so this is the response in rural Karnataka and will be the response anywhere in rural India. And this is something that should hearten us and encourage us, because this is the reality. People want books, people want to read. Reading is a very deep human urge, and that's why no amount of computers, Kindles, AI, nothing will come in the way between the human urge to read and to know and to understand the world through fiction or through words or through non-fiction, whatever, but to know more. So that's a tremendous human urge which gave us this thing. So what started in November 2020 has now grown. We found that libraries were functioning only for 4 hours. We made some administrative changes. We said they will function on Saturdays and Sundays. They will have an off day on Mondays and alternate Tuesdays. We said that they will function for 6 hours. We were the only department which actually increased the wages of librarians in the middle of COVID. Again thereafter, we were able to increase the wages, and now librarians in Karnataka get minimum wages and libraries function for 8 hours. Libraries have managed to enroll 50 lakh children in Karnataka in the last 3 years, which is a tremendous thing. This is the work of libraries, it's the work of communities, it's the work of panchayats, it's the work of department officials, but most of all, it's the work of children who didn't have access to books and now find that there are picture books in the libraries, there are chessboards and so on. So why am I talking about libraries as centers for information, interaction and inclusion? As Professor Chandrasekhar said, libraries are not merely repositories of books. Often when I speak to some of my friends in Bangalore, they still think that libraries are, places where you go once in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you check out 2 books, you return 2 books and you check out 2 books. That's not the case for the rural public library. The rural public library is a center for information. People come to know what's going on. It's a center for information even at the panchayat level, because the panchayat makes action plans, has budgets, has funds which can make a difference in people's lives. Children can go to the library and find out when is the next Bal Sabha, Makkal Gram Sabha, where they can raise a question. There's an electricity wire, this actually happened. There's an electricity wire, live wire, which is fallen on the football field or the playground, the school playground, and we're not able to play over there. It's not safe. We need to. So these are the kinds of ways in which information at the local level. Ever since we put computers in the libraries, we find that every election there are senior citizens sitting and watching the counting happening and the results in the libraries, which is very heartening. We have Telegram groups and WhatsApp groups across the state, so we see this happening. Interaction. We've put chessboards in the libraries. And the moment we put chessboards, because we found Tamil Nadu was having a chess competition, and we said we also want to put chessboards in our libraries. Moment we put chessboard, the community did not say, oh, libraries should be a quiet space, why should we put chessboards? They took it as a natural extension and growth of the library. I find in a small, tiny library in Kodagu, on the border of Nagarhole forest, I found I went to the library and I found a bunch of kids watching a chess game. I said, who are the 2 champions playing the game? So there was a little tribal boy in a government school uniform, and there was a young Muslim boy in a private school uniform, and both of them come every day and play in the evening. This again was very heartening. We're blurring the boundaries. In Bangalore, I would be hard-pressed to find places where children going to government schools and private schools actually play together on a daily basis like this. We've almost created boundaries that separate the gated lives of people who access private institutions of learning and those who access the public school. So this again was beautiful. We found elderly people with disabilities playing with young people, teaching them the rules of the game. intergenerational spaces, and therefore libraries are spaces for interaction, for the community to come together. The very first Indian Library Congress that I attended, Kannur Congress, 3 of our librarians from Karnataka also attended. I remember a librarian called Savitri. I spoke to them when I'd come to Kannur, and while I was waiting for my session to start, I was talking to them and telling them, this was two and a half years ago. So I was telling them that, we need to make our libraries inclusive even for people with disabilities. We need to do something. So I said, we'll figure out ways, we'll get devices, assistive devices, and so on. By then I'd come back and we'd started working out a plan for assistive devices, digital voice assistants, braille books, things like that. Savitri from Mandekulu, a small library in Dakshin Kannada, had already gone to visit families in her panchayat, families whose young people had been affected with endosulfan, which had caused disability. She had invited them to come to the library, and she had organized activities for them, even with a little smiley ball, those yellow balls, to sit in the library. So here was a very deep understanding of the library as an inclusive space. That you can go beyond braille books, you can go beyond digital voice assistants, you can go beyond the use of the library as a space for people to read, people with disabilities to read. It can even just be a safe space for them to come and get some respite. I thought that was a very, very sophisticated and beautiful understanding of the library as an inclusive space. Today we understand libraries as inclusive spaces, both for people with disabilities. We're putting digital voice assistants in 200 libraries. We hope to expand it. We've put braille books. We've also put readers, devices which plug in with a USB and they can scan text and read even if it's not converted to braille or even if the child doesn't know braille. So these are assistive devices. These help young people to read. They also help, we've also got devices in 2,000 libraries, which we're expanding to 6,000, which are chessboards, checkerboards, and snakes and ladders, which are tactile, with tactile surfaces. When we launched this, the program is called Darshini, when we launched this, a blind Panchayat Development Officer called Prashant, who's a faculty at our state institute, again gave a very beautiful understanding and sophisticated understanding of inclusion. He said, a child who's able and a child who's visually impaired can play this game together, and you can actually blur these boundaries. Also, the importance of snakes and ladders in every child's life, both in a child's life who has a disability and in a child's life who doesn't have a disability, is that it teaches them that even if you fall down, there are ways that you can roll the dice and you can actually move forward. So these are the ways in which our Karnataka libraries are moving forward. We have seen grandmothers, grandfathers coming with the children and learning to read and write from the children. We've also started programs of actually teaching Panchayat members who are not able to read and write. We have slowly started teaching them actual literacy. So these are some of the things that we're trying to do. I remember a story that a literacy activist once told me, that Shivram Karalji, when they went to visit him, they asked him to create readers for people who had just learned to read and write. At first he was startled. He said, how will people who have just learned to read and write, how will they understand my books? So then they said, but they also have a right to read your books. Immediately, that night itself, he wrote 4 drafts of 4 stories which were almost like poems, which were meant for the neoliterate reader, adult reader. And these stories were illustrated with K.K. Hebar's illustrations. These were published by UNESCO for a project in Mysore. They were later republished for the Dakshin Kannada Literacy Campaign. They were again republished when I took up a statewide literacy campaign as a young officer. And now we have requested one of our partner organizations. We have multiple partner organizations, NGOs who are coming to us, working with us on non-financial basis, and we welcome every partner organization. They are planning to publish these again for us, print them again for us and give it to us. Libraries are a space for every kind of inclusion. They are a space, and this inclusion is important because the formal education system can often be a gatekeeper for knowledge. And because of rote learning, because of verbal methods of learning, because of excessive reliance on memory, because of a dependence on the child being a second generation or a third generation from a third generation literate family. My own family, both my grandmothers could not complete school, but they ensured that all their children studied. My mother was the first graduate in her family. Today in our generation, just in 2 generations, we have civil servants, we have PhDs, MBAs and so on. So the power of education, if we want to democratize, we have to supplement the formal education system with open library spaces, public library spaces, which are community spaces, which allow for self-directed learning, critical thinking, inquiry, creativity, innovation, and so on. So these are some of the things that we're trying. And a final word about how we're actually doing this. We recognize that many children who come to our libraries, most of the children may be first generation learners. Their parents may be working at in physical labor, engineering work sites and so on. We allow these children, we welcome them, encourage them to borrow books. We encourage them to borrow picture books, bring it back and so on. We not only do that, we conduct library activities. So every month there is an activity around reading, around writing and reflection and narration. So if they read a book, they will reflect on it. They will reflect and they can write their reflection in words if they want, they can draw it if they want, or if they don't want, they don't have to do it. I think that's the key, that this doesn't happen in a school system. This is where they are encouraged to freely reflect on the work that they're doing. We also have read-alouds. So reading is not only a private activity in the libraries, that's definitely there, but it's also a shared activity. And read-alouds are a way, interactive way in the story circle for children to actually, we started these read-alouds with the help of partners like Adhyayan Foundation, Azim Premji Foundation and multiple other organizations. But now the children form their own story circles and they read these stories and they discuss these. These are some of the things that we have found. Happy to say that this year we are starting, we've already got the books, we've got the furniture, and now we're ordering computers. We are now starting 6,599 village level libraries, so that children and their parents or grandparents don't have to walk 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers in order to come to the library. The library will be in their village itself. We are making these efforts with a view to actually open up learning for all. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you for that very fair question. I should say that actually, I'm not so sure that this is not a movement. A movement doesn't have to be very large and very dramatic and very this thing, as you very well know. This actually is lots of little tiny movements, because much of the stuff that I didn't say is that panchayats actually took over the meaning of a library space. And for example, we had said that you revive the library and make it a friendly space. So they started putting sofas, child-sized sofas and beanbags and indoor plants and curtains, colorful curtains. So when they're doing that with their own money, and all of this has been done without the state spending money, except on the wages of the librarians, the rest is all done by the panchayats, then I think that's actually lots of little tiny movements in a dispersed way. This has not been pushed. Yes, of course, enabling instructions and enabling orders, but nothing has been micromanaged as far as what should a library look like, some places they put a green wall, some places they put pink curtains, so that's something. The other day I went to a library where the panchayat itself had got an award of 5 lakhs for good governance and so on. So they decided that children needed more space, and so they constructed, and they said that the librarian can only work 8 hours, but our children, sometimes our young people, need to study into the night. So this was a very interesting thing. They constructed a terrace on top, they created a stairway outside, so that the librarian, who's a woman, can lock up and leave, and she's very good, but she obviously cannot work more than 8 hours. So she locks up and leaves, but they young people continue to go upstairs on the terrace with lights, with a table, with water and so on, and they continue to study into the night. So this, I think, is far more interesting to me than a massive, strong, visible cultural movement. I think the fact that panchayats are taking ownership through their library committees, asking, now we have in North Karnataka, there's another program which came from Kerala, which we borrowed, called the Pustaka Kudam, I think you all call it, the book nest. Little free libraries in Kerala, which we saw something about it and we said, let's also try this. So we started it in Dakshin Kannada district. Dakshin Kannada, of course, is almost Kerala, it's right next door. And so it worked very well. We have 280 little free libraries in public spaces like bus stop. But we said, let's try this in North Karnataka. And in North Karnataka now, we have 70 plus little free libraries coming up in bus stops, public bus stops and so on. And the entire community actually comes. The panchayat president, the members, the PDO, the panchayat officials, some places even the MLA, and school teachers, children, they come and they stand there for the inauguration and they're using it. So I think these are ways in which more than big movements, little tiny movements towards change are much more encouraging for me as an administrator. And these can easily happen. The state can play an enabling role. Bihar, for example, has got 100 community libraries run by SAG women. And now I'm told they have announced that they're going to do several thousand more across the state. So that's an encouragement. I feel that once we give communities this space, enable them, help them by setting up committees, enable them by giving local oversight. These are ways in which they can take it forward in multiple ways. May not happen all across the state in exactly the same way or at the same pace, but it certainly will happen because communities have that thirst for learning, for spaces where their children, mothers and children, fathers and children come and read together. That was not happening earlier. So that's again a space for bonding, and communities have a very deep understanding of these opportunities and they're making use of it.
Thank you. So local self-governing bodies have to be robust and yes, that is. Questions? Here? Yes.
Excuse me, I'm talking Kannada. Madam, ನಾವು ಹೇಳಿದ್ವಿ ಊರಿಗೊಂದು ಪಂಚಾಯತಿ ಅಂತ ಪಂಚಾಯತ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಇದೆ ಒಪ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ ಬಟ್ 75 ಇಯರ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಮನವಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಈಗ ಊರಿಗೊಂದು ಹಿಂದೆ ಶಾಲೆ ಅಂತ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಊರಿಗೊಂದು ಲೈಬ್ರರಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಸ್ತ್ರೀಶಕ್ತಿ ಕುಡಿಯೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಶಿಕ್ಷೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ ಒಂದು ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಕಲಿತಾರೆ ಶಾಲೆ ತೆರೆದಂತೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಇನ್ನೊಂದೇನಾಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿನ ಕೆಲವರು ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಓವರ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಆಗಿದ್ದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವು ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀ ಬುಕ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ತಾರೆ. ಆ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಲೈಬ್ರರಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನಾಲೆಡ್ಜ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬರಲಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ. ಬರೀ ಬುಕ್ಸ್ ಬಂದಾಗಲೇ ಬೇಡ, ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಆರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ಬರಲಿ ಅಂತ. ಐ ಆಮ್ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಟೆಲ್ ಟೀಚರ್ ನಾವು. ಹಾಗೆ ಶ್ರೀಶಕ್ತಿ ಇದೆ,
Thank you. His question was that elderly people find it difficult to go to the panchayat library and therefore there should be a library in a village. I think that's a wonderful suggestion, and as I said, the government has already decided. We got some additional funds. We are setting up with 264 crores, we're setting up 6,599 village libraries. Of course, we still have more way to go because there are 28,000 villages, but 6,600 libraries plus the 5,800 which already exist will lead to more than 12,000 libraries across Karnataka, across rural Karnataka, which means that this average distance that a person would have to walk is actually reduced. ನಾವು ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ತೀರ್ಮಾನ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ 6,600 ಗ್ರಂಥಾಲಯಗಳು ಗ್ರಾಮ ಗ್ರಂಥಾಲಯಗಳು ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ. His other suggestion was that women self-help group members should run it. That's also something that we have been working on. ಅದು ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. And school libraries, schoolಗೆ ಕೂಡ connection ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. Connecting with the schools. All are very valid and good suggestions.
Ma'am, your presentation was really amazing, insightful, and a lot to learn. Ma'am, you talked about, of course, this about the library movement. I just wanted to know, is there any study which has been conducted that once you have these public libraries, what has been the impact in terms of academic performance, in terms of livelihood, and what it was pre-library movement? So a kind of an outcome. What has been the outcome of these libraries which you have set in terms of academic performance and livelihood? The second part you did talk about briefly. You mentioned about the diversity, the inclusion, and the inclusion. But is it a very large inclusion in terms of caste exclusion, class, women? Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting questions. The first question about studies that have been done, not specifically in Karnataka. Of course, one PhD thesis already has been submitted on this by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. I don't know if he's here. And there are others who are working on it. I'm sure Dr. Ramilan can talk about studies done in Kerala and Kannur and others. But worldwide, there have been lots of studies of the 19th century, early 20th century public library expansions in Western countries and Scandinavian countries and so on. There's a lot of research, not so much in India. There are studies happening in Karnataka, concurrent studies. I'm sorry, your second question?
About the inclusion.
Yes, inclusion in terms of that. So this is the thing that we haven't done specific studies, but we are getting a concurrent evaluation done. We have one organization called CRISP is working with us and going to do a concurrent evaluation. There's another organization called Center for Budget and Policy Studies, which is planning to study exactly this, about diversity, about inclusiveness, about social equity within the libraries. Anecdotally, on livelihood, we find there are n number of all the exams that have happened in the last, public service exams that have happened in the last 2 or 3 years. We have found stories and small videos shared by librarians of people who have studied in the libraries, who have requested the libraries to provide books that are expensive, 1,000 rupee, 2,000 rupee books, which can be shared, which can be studied. We even have libraries where young people come from remote areas and actually sleep there through the night. There are some such libraries, and that's very heartening. So this is all anecdotal, but we find impact on people getting livelihood because these are spaces, safe spaces to study. But we'll have more information on the actual diversity. Mahila Samakhya went out and did a small little scoping and recommended to us that we should have a women's hour in the afternoon. And so that's something that we started, because we found that the mornings is when the senior citizen gentlemen do come, but women wanted time to finish work and so on, and then come in the afternoon, and they wanted a quiet hour. So that's something that we have started. But of course, we are taking more and more efforts. We are now taking steps we have around 6,000, 7,000 hostels for children from SC, ST and other communities, where we are now taking steps to ensure not only that they have membership, but also that they have regular library interactions. So these are some of the steps that we have.
No, yes, very briefly, yes. Yes. This will be I'm sorry.
Very briefly,
one more question.
I am Gopal Krishna. I am 1954 model. I was born 54 in a small village near Ballari. I am from a Dalit family. At the age of say 11, there was I started reading newspaper through reading room in that village. So only that brought me up in. I am first generation graduate, postgraduate. Then I attribute everything to the reading room that I was introduced to when I was 10 years old, 11 years old. Now I had done my MBA from IIM Bangalore. I was working with SBI. So now I am retired. 72 years. So this is anecdotal story of the influence of a reading room in my early years. Thank you.
Yes, there's one last question. Brief. Can you keep it short?
ಮೇಡಮ್ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ, ನಾನು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿಂದ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸಾರ್ವಜನಿಕ ಗ್ರಂಥ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ 15 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ತಾವು ಗ್ರಾಮೀಣಾಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಇಲಾಖೆಯಲ್ಲಿ 5666 ಗ್ರಾಮ ಪಂಚಾಯತಿಗಳನ್ನ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಜೀವನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಾ. ನಮ್ಮ ಇಲಾಖೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಕೇವಲ ಬರೀ 75 ರೂಪಾಯಿಯಿಂದ 3500 ರೂಪಾಯಿವರೆಗೂ ವೇತನ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಸಂಬಳ. ತಾವು ಬಂದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಈಗ 17,000 ಚಿಲ್ಲರೆ ಸಂಬಳ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಅದು ತುಂಬ ನಮಗೆ ಖುಷಿ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅದೇ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿಲಿ ಈಗ ಕೇವಲ ಇಡೀ ಸ್ಟೇಟಲ್ಲಿ 750 ಜನ ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ನೌಕರಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ನನ್ನೊಂದು ಮನವಿ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಸಾರ್ವಜನಿಕ ಇಲಾಖೆ ಗ್ರಂಥಾಲಯ ಇಲಾಖೆನೂ ಕೂಡ RDPR ಯೊಂದಿಗೆ ಸಹಯೋಗದೊಂದಿಗೆ ಸಂಯೋಜನೆ ಮಾಡಿಸಿ ಒಂದು ಉನ್ನತ ದರ್ಜೆಯ ಗ್ರಂಥಾಲಯ ಇಲಾಖೆಯನ್ನ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ಪಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕಂತ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಮನವಿ ಮೇಡಮ್. ತುಂಬಾ ಒಂದು ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇಡೀ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲೇ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿರುವಷ್ಟು ಲೈಬ್ರರಿಗಳು ಯಾವ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲೂ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಇದೆ.
Thank you. His question was really that Panchayat library, the rural libraries have come to the RDPR department and they have seen a revival. The wages have now been improved to minimum wage for all librarians. His suggestion is that all libraries in Karnataka, the remaining libraries in the public libraries department, which include the urban libraries, should also see a similar kind of revival and upgradation. Certainly we will look into it and see what best can be done. Thank you.